Hey now, yeah, good morning PSW staff, clients, friends, joining us for Tuesday, Classical Tuesday. That's how we like to do it. Yesterday we looked at Mulholland Drive, your film scoring assignment, so get that into me by today. We'll see the results for Friday, that kind of eerie, windy road, Mulholland Drive. So give me some good eerie music for that. I think not too scary though. Let's make it good for the kids. Today we'll look at two gentlemen that really had a huge importance on musical theater, which is what we talk about today, and also opera, musical theater, and then what I find interesting, even if you're not into musical theater or opera, we all enjoy movies, right? So it's interesting to see how acting, directing, and writing on the stage translates to films that we see today. And these two guys really started something a long time ago that a sense of their partnership provided many people that we have. Monty Python wouldn't have probably existed had it not been for these witty individuals, and along with many others. So today we're going to be looking at the world of Gilbert and Sullivan.
I am the very model of a modern major general. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the facts historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I'm very well acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations both as simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I'm teeming with a lot of news. Lot of news. Got it. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse.
With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse.
So these guys changed the content and the form of musical theater. This is operetta, which is operettas tends to be shorter, right? It's a little different than the long Verdi, Puccini operas, where you kind of mix songs with spoken dialogue and dance numbers and all these things. And light operas is another word that we've used with some spoken dialogue. Sometimes that dialogue is sung and spoken as well, and that kind of gets into early musical theater. So. But what they did, and why I mentioned Monty Python, is what they did is that they would show a lot of their subjects, like politics and social issues, and they'd address them in a witty way. So we're going to look at three words, three terms, just so we're all on the same page of. They did it in a witty way without sacrificing just being pure fun entertainment. So they did it, and in a way that was slightly offensive, but enough to be entertaining and witty, and not just so they would be burned at the stake. So the three little terms that I just want to go over, they use satire. A lot of these we know. That's humor and irony, right? Exaggeration. That's a way to expose and criticize people's kind of unawareness and stupidity and all that stuff. So satire is a very effective way to do that. Parody is another word, is the second word. That's also kind of an exaggeration or an imitation of something, right? You can parody somebody, at least in this country, you can parody anybody and not be, well, I guess you can be canceled today because everything's canceled, but so parody. We're also going to talk, the third term is pastiche. I know that sounds like a big word, but really pastiche is really just an artistic work in the style that kind of copies another work in a way, imitates another work. So so those kind of three terms are what Gilbert, who's the lyricist, the kind of, Arthur Sullivan's the composer, okay, but those kind of three terms are what Gilbert's going to really use, and the two of these guys are going to use in their libretti and all of their works that they write that are going to kind of not disrupt the establishment, but kind of poke at the establishment. We all like comedians and people that kind of poke gently, or sometimes not gently, at the establishment.
So poverty is obsolete and hunger is abolished. We're going to abolish it in England. The Chamberlain, our native stage, has heard beyond a question of risky situation and indelicate suggestion. The piece is tolerated if it's costumed indiscreetly.
In short, this happy country has been anglicized completely, completely, completely. It may surprising, multiply, undersizing. We are brought about to this like a marvelous. In an enterprising human machine, if you look at the human machine, you're truly over to a marvelous.
So Gilbert and Sullivan, Arthur Sullivan, the composer, wrote very catchy melodies, as we're hearing, and Gilbert's witty libretti satire formed that model of the 18th century musical theater that followed. So that is the Victorian era partnership. So what do we know in the history of England, the United Kingdom? Victorian era was under the realm of Queen Victoria, right? So that's like 1837 to 1901. So this is when they're writing. This is the Victorian era. We've talked about Victorian houses architecture a little bit, but you know, so and the two of these guys collaborated on 14 comedic operas between 1871 and 1896. Probably the most famous, HMS Pinafore, Pirates of Penzance, and the Mikado are probably what they're most known for. So, having said all this, let's get over to London, see where that even is, from Hollywood to London, and let's look at the timeline, because I'm throwing out some dates, and we need to picture these dates. So this is when they're writing, 1871 to around 1896. Who else is going on? So if they're writing light operas, we can go to Rossini, who is going on in he's writing he's kind of witty with his musical writing, but he's kind of his biggest influence, Rossini's, Barber of Seville, we know Rossini, is Mozart. Mozart is his biggest influence. Who else is going on? Wagner's going on at the same time. Wagner doesn't sound like Rossini at all. They're very different. Wagner's drenched in romanticism, and maybe a little Mozart in there, but more probably Beethoven. But Wagner's, creating this. We did a whole class on Wagner. Gilbert and Sullivan come right after. Wagner's still alive, right after, but before George M. Cohan. Remember George M. Cohan? We talked about him like last 4th of July, I think. George M. Cohan was a Yankee Doodle dandy, right? He was kind of influential with the book musical. So there's all this grand opera, light opera, and then kind of more sing-sung, show tune-ish, Tin Pan Alley. This is the early 20th century, and Cohan wrote all of these great songs. And we looked at all of those great songs in Yankee Doodle Dandy, the movie that came out in 1942, with, the great Jimmy Cagney. Gilbert and Sullivan's producer, he got these guys, he nurtured these guys' collaboration. He built the Savoy Theater. That was their playground in 1881 to present their works. Gilbert was born in London, 1836. His dad was a naval surgeon, and he wrote novels and short stories. And to supplement income, Gilbert began writing illustrated stories, poems, and articles. And then Sullivan, the composer, was born in 1842. His father was a military band leader, but by the age of 8, he's a prodigy. He's writing music, anthems, songs, studies at the Royal Academy of Music. We've talked about many composers. Benjamin Britten studied there, and he studies conducting too. So he was a classical composer in his own right, but it was really his collaboration with Gilbert that, why we're talking about him today, probably.
Songs of our singing a vigil we keep. When daylight is fading and wrapped in night shading, with soft serenading, we sing them to sleep. With soft serenading, we sing them to sleep. With soft serenading, we sing them to sleep.
So their first was this grand opera, and it was for Christmas entertainment. Their first collaboration for this 1871, and it was political satire and grand opera, in a parody that was mimicking Offenbach, who's a famous composer of the era. So that was kind of their first way of mimicking something that happened, and audiences loved that. They scored huge success with HMS Pinafore. That was 1878, and they really satirized the unqualified people to positions of authority. And so they're poking fun, good-natured fun, in this place, in the Royal Navy, and English is, England's obsession with social status, because it's all high-minded, right, in England, but they would poke fun at these things. Interesting how they work together. Mostly Gilbert, the lyricist, oversaw the design of the sets and the costumes. So not only is he writing the stories and all of these things, he's also directing these things, and he directed the performers on stage. And he wanted realism in the acting. He didn't want the self-conscious interaction with the audience. He wanted the characters. He never wanted the actors, his characters, to be aware of their own absurdity. So they would play it straight, and that's what made the comedy so great, I think.
Every journey has an end. When the worst affairs will mend, dodge the guard when day is nigh. Hustle your horse and don't say die.
He also insisted that his actors, you couldn't change one word of his. So they had to know it perfectly, and his stage direction had to be followed, and that was something new to actors on the stage today, because again, this isn't grand opera. This is kind of getting into operetta, so there's no improvisation here. So he was very strict about his words being followed, and the actors unaware of their own absurdity going on stage, which of course adds to the humor in a better way, I think. The Pirates of Penzance is one of their most famous ones too, poked fun at grand opera. So they're poking fun at their own profession in a way. Probably the Mikado is their most famous work, and this is in 1885, and this made fun of the whole English bureaucracy in a Japanese setting. This was their longest running hit, about 672 performances at the Savoy Theatre. Mike Leigh, the famous English director, made a great movie, Topsy Turvy, in 1999 about Gilbert Sullivan, and their production is the Mikado, which he kind of shows the development and the making of this opera.
Three little maids from school are we, proud as a schoolgirl well can be, filled to the brim with girlish glee. Three little maids from school, everything is a source of fun. Nobody's safe, for we care for none. Life is a joke that's just begun. Three little maids from school. Three little maids who all unwary come from a ladies' seminary. Three forestinias tutelary. Three little maids from school. Three little maids from school.
So, Gilbert's lyrics they were a model. They influenced so many people, including Cole Porter. We did a whole class on Cole Porter. Great songwriter, but also lyricist too. Cole Porter wrote music and lyrics, and that was something kind of unusual. As great as Richard Rodgers was, he didn't really write, he didn't write lyrics. As great as Gershwin was, he needed his brother Ira, and Ira Gershwin was also influenced by Gilbert's writing. Both of them, even though they poked fun at the establishment, received knighthood though for their accomplishments, and so that was kind of cool. So these two guys really were innovative. They introduced, in content and form directly, and really influenced musical theater writing up into the 20th century. So they're kind of out that by the 20th century, but their ideas are still being talked about. Their operas are still being performed. I guess I do love the music. I love the writing, but I really love what they were doing in terms of parody, pastiche, satire, those kinds of things, humor. It's fun that we can have those in musical theater, in music, in films. We have that. That's how we laugh and enjoy entertainment. So hope you enjoyed Gilbert and Sullivan. Hope that wasn't too heady. I'm sure that was fine. I mean, as you can see from their performances, it's a lot of fun, and people loved this stuff. I mean, they were hugely successful and famous, as they should be. All right. What else we got? I think that's it. That's it for today. We've done more than enough work. Okay, miss you and love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.